Empaths and solutions for distortions. In my other video on empaths and cognitive distortions, I listed 10 distortions of cognition, and now we're going to look at 10 ways in which one can identify what those are. One is you first identify the distortion. 2 is to examine the evidence. 3 is the double standard method. 4 is the experimental technique. 5 is thinking in shades of gray. 6 is the survey method. 7 is define the terms. 8 is the semantic method. 9 is reattribution, and 10 is cost-benefit analysis. So first is identify the distortion. Write down your negative thoughts so you can see which one of the 10 cognitive distortions you're involved in. This will make it easier to think about the problem in a more positive and realistic way. So those of you that remember, I'm not going to go through all of them. The first one was all or nothing thinking, and the second one was overgeneralization. So if you have found that when you're identifying your negative thoughts on the paper, on the list that you're making for yourself, you would identify if in the example that you're writing about, do you have an all or nothing thinking that, it's just absolute, it's just there's no in between? Or are you overgeneralizing it, that you just feel that the event is completely negative and the patterns, like they're never ending? So when you think about what a pattern is like and it's never ending, is that anytime you think about it, you talk about it, it's the same cycle that you are regurgitating or repeating over and over again. You are repeating over and over again that this is what you're finding or you're noticing to be true about this and that in the story. And so as such, you are having to go in this cycle of turning and turning and turning in the same defeatist type of narrative. And so when you identify the distortion by writing things down, it really allows you to put into check and put into perspective what is actually happening versus what is not happening. And as for myself, over the years, I did not realize that I was actually doing those things at all. However, I have a tendency to write a lot, and my writing comes across in many different ways. I take shorthand notes, and sometimes I write long stories and paragraphs of things, or they're just thoughts that come and I write them down. And I definitely rewrite experiences that have happened in order for me to mentally check, what did I say? What did the person say? What was happening? Could I have said something different? Could the situation have been done differently? I have a tendency to do that. Also with writing, I also voice record. And so I, in the past and present, still do that in order to revisit. And there are times where you're in an emotion, you're in a certain state of mind. So when you are voice recording yourself, you can capture the exact vibration of that time in order to get back to it, to see what that was about, and to see how the growth and the expansion that can happen thereafter. I have noticed this tremendously, that over the years where I started with my voice recordings till now, the growth that has happened and the insight and the updates that I've made about how I feel about certain things or how I perceive things and how I look at things. So it all depends on your style, it all depends on your comfort, it all depends on, what's happening with you, what you feel more comfortable with. So writing it down, speaking them out loud, speaking them in voice, you need to have them on some form of record for yourself so that you can go back to it. And we'll do number 2, which is to examine the evidence. Instead of assuming that your negative thought is true, examine the actual evidence for it. For example, if you feel that you never do anything right, you could list several things you have done successfully. And that is exactly a very good point in way we're going to end this video. Oftentimes we can beat ourselves up We can be the voice that is the strongest and the loudest in terms of our story, in terms of how we see ourselves, and really put ourselves down. And the world has a tendency of doing a very good job at that. So we don't need to help the world in order to beat ourselves down. You do need to be realistic, though, of where you can improve and the things that you need to be better at, or how you can show up better for yourself and ultimately society and the world. So it's not about having like a convoluted way of seeing things or approaching things. What it really needs to be is that you're doing your self-work. You're doing your internal and integral work, because you cannot allow people to speak the narrative of who you are and then internalize it and have those things distort your cognition. What happens is we come into the earth born as we are. Yes, we do bring certain generational traumas that can then enact in our lives. However, what is true is as we're developing from infancy into adulthood, there are other people, places, and things that we've attracted to into our experience that also play upon the distortions that happen within our cognition. And it is our responsibility to not pick them up, adopt them, and wear them, and then internalize them as well, and then be upset with those people, places, and things because they have then, done these things to us. What it really is we have made the choice to become those things, to become the distortions that we have been fed. We can create the reality that we want, and that reality that we're creating, it's a daily basis, it's a daily work. And that work looks like you taking into accountability that you are the common denominator in all of the situations in which you are interfacing with. And when you take the strength of your power to do this work, it is a way in which you can liberate yourself from certain dogmas and certain agendas that might be already set for you to fulfill. You are the one directing your life, and so you will never stagnate, or you will never go down the path of someone else's narrative as long as you continue to follow your own checklist. Check yourself on a daily basis of how you're showing up in the world. And so if there's anything that I said here that resounds for you, subscribe, like, share, and comment. And remember, powerful beings, embrace your nature. It has the roots to heal you.